is the first of a 5-part series around relationships, and something very dear to my heart and Jess's as well. We've had our ups and downs, and we've had all sorts of challenges with them as we've been through our relationship, and with families and at work and all sorts of different areas of life. Relationships can be wonderful, they can be hideous, they can be challenging, they can be beautiful, they can be all sorts of wonderful things. The aim of this 5-part series is to give you guys our, I don't say expertise, but our experience and the things we've learned along the way, that will then allow you to have some tools and some attitudes and some strategies maybe that will help you to resolve some challenges, enhance and improve relationships, understand what happens in relationships that cause them to be challenging sometimes, and have that kind of emotional intelligence that will really help you to be a better leader, help you to have better awareness, and I'll just join a few people up, will hopefully allow any relationships you've got going on to flourish. And it's not always easy, don't get me wrong, and it does require a bit of thought, but having some tools and having some ways of thinking about these things will allow you then to start to apply them, and then you see the results. And one of the fantastic things about NLP is it's just so great for relationships. And those of you who have joined in the calls before would have maybe had a little bit of background about NLP, so we won't necessarily go into that now. It's just a wonderful set of ideas, methodologies, tools, attitudes that allow you to be, do, and have anything you want, and have a great experience of life and be as happy as possible for no particular reason in your life, and have it feel fulfilled for you. And having a fulfilling relationship, one of those, fulfilling life is intimately tied in with having good relationships. It's very difficult to squirrel yourself away and not have to deal with people, which is, I know that for a fact because that's what I used to do. I found it very, very difficult dealing with anyone ever, let alone dealing with myself. So I would hide myself away and not have relationships with people as much as possible because it was just too difficult. And over the years, since I met Jess, I've learned all sorts of cool stuff that's really helped me not only have a better relationship with myself, but allow that to then leak out into my other relationships and resolve them. And I've still got lots of work to do. It's a never-ending process, self-development and growth, as I'm sure you all know. Once I said to Jess yesterday, another silly analogy, but once you pop, you can't stop when it comes to self-improvement. And once you find that door and you walk through it, it's always a bit great. So understanding that really helps you to keep figuring things through and keep working through things. And something that we help a lot of people with in our coaching and in our corporate trainings and our NLP trainings as well. So I'm always excited to help you lovely people to improve those areas. And a lot of the time it's pretty straightforward. So this session is about relabeling, which is a really nice, fairly straightforward tool to help you change relationships, particularly challenging relationships. If I just show you something else we've got going on. So those of you who have just joined, 5-part series that we're going to be running through. Tonight's going to be about changing relationships effortlessly. Just to quickly whiz through that one again. It's going to be about relabeling, which is a really fantastic NLP tool that we, I think Jess came up with this one actually. The next session next week, Jess will be running you through that one. Escaping your relationship blueprint, which is a very interesting subject. She's really great at relationships and she'll run you through that. The third week will be me again, in terms of increasing emotional intelligence. Get a bit of feedback here through, sorry about that. one of the things I'm most interested in and most fascinated by is emotional intelligence. It really is a cool subject. So week 3, I'll run through that one. Jess then will take you through again how to make relationships great. And then the final one will be intimacy and the feminine and masculine energies within relationships. It's really cool stuff, and I very much hope that will start to transform your relationships as you go through it. All right. One of the wonderful things that we're good at as human beings is putting things in boxes, understanding with a basic bit of information about something, we can put it into a category, and then once it's in the category, we can really understand quickly and effectively how to deal with it. And we do that with human beings, unfortunately, which can be a really good thing, but can be a really challenging thing as well. Great relationships with people who are useful for you in your life or provide love, support, and help for you. They will most likely be in your good generalizations list. There will be helpful labels that you've attached to those lovely people. So we don't tend to mess around with those at all. We don't worry about we don't worry about helpful, useful generalizations because they're perfect. We leave them as they are. It's only the ones that come up for us that are particularly challenging that cause us to look out for some particular things in relationships in these people that cause us challenges and stress. And it's fair to say that you only need one person in your life that can cause you challenges and stress, whether it's at work or at home. It only takes one person. If it's lots of different people in different contexts, it can be really, really hard for you. Now, there could be a lot of different things going on there for you. It could be you got some stuff going on that needs to be resolved around all people, so we have lots of other tools for that in NLP. But if it's a particular person at work, say your manager or a colleague, even if you labeled your partner, some elements of their behavior, lots of different people who it could be. Once you've given them these labels, these generalizations, then it's going to cause you stress. And that's the last thing we need. And if our intention is to be as happy as possible in each area of our lives, then we really want to make sure that we have some basic tools that allow us to see other evidence of what's actually going on out there. Maybe look at situations in a different way. But it's not going to work until we change the labels that we give to people. So luckily enough, we have this lovely technique that allows us to change the label, because these labels they're dropped in at an unconscious level. You need to have one big challenging experience with someone, or 2, normally 3 experiences will then lead to your unconscious mind making a generalization about a person or a thing. So maybe you have one large experience with someone at work, there's a big blow up, there's a big argument or something, and you see that person and think, oh, blimey, they're an angry so-and-so. Or it might be 1 or 2 or 3 particular situations that have led up to having this idea about this particular person that's causing you to be wary or to be stressed or to be to have a challenge with that particular person, a lack of communication, a lack of rapport, which is always a problem, and just an ineffective relationship. Could be a lot more usefulness there. And this is something that I'd say when I'm coaching, maybe at least once a week, I get someone saying to me, right, I want to leave work because of this person. I had someone the other day said, I want to leave their whole career because of one person. And it's a pretty quick fix when you know the right tools, so we can show you that one tonight. So I would like to just quickly ask you guys, you lovely people, I will say you guys, if that offends anyone, I'll stop using that. So you lovely people, has anyone got an example of a challenging person in their life somewhere, colleague at work, where it might be, where they're struggling with that particular person, and what kind of label you might have given them? So it could be they're a bit aggressive, or they're obstructive, or they're passive aggressive. What else we got? The negative, maybe they're miserable. What sort of ideas have you got about someone in your life? Because we're going to need, hopefully, I'll try and do this on a couple of people so we can show you through how this process works. So who's got someone?
I've got someone. They can't
Naomi?
communicate. Angie.
Angie?
They struggle to communicate.
Sorry again?
They struggle to communicate.
Okay. How's that a problem for you?
Because I need information from them and to do my job.
Yeah. So they don't communicate?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure that would be quite there yet. So what's the problem element of that behavior? Which way are they not communicating in the way you'd like? How would you label that?
As in, I need more information from them to do my job, and they're not very forthcoming with it.
Okay, not forthcoming. Good, that's better. We can work with that one. Okay, thanks, Angie. Okay, anyone else?
My partner. So that's quite bad to say, but yeah, my current partner, very dismissive.
Very what, sorry?
Dismissive of anything.
Dismissive. Yeah. So Naomi. Yeah, that's another nice one to work with. Okay, perfect. What else we got?
I work with someone who's quite controlling, Nick.
Controlling, yeah. Thanks, Amy. Yeah, that's a very frequent one that we have to deal with. Lovely. Anyone else? It can be a friend of a friend, you know, if you know what I mean. Someone else.
Asking for a friend, you mean?
That's the one, yeah, that's the one. Can be challenging when this is goes out to more than you guys. Okay, so far we've got not forthcoming, dismissive, controlling. Any others?
Hi Nick, it's Maria.
Hi Maria.
Hello, hello. How about when you talk to somebody and they make you feel totally inadequate?
They make you feel inadequate?
Yeah.
Okay, so how do they do that? What's their behaviour?
So, I don't know, maybe a smirky smile, or just making me feel that I'm not sort of, at the level that is required. Just a kind of that. And again, I'm sure a lot of this is perhaps how I perceive, that person rather than how he wants to be perceived. Yeah. But so it's, and I don't know whether he feels intimidated by me and therefore then he's having to adopt some kind of behavior, or it's just me totally looking at him with different glasses.
Right, okay, so the behavior is, was it almost like he's looking down, they're looking down on you, or they're making you feel, what did you say?
Yeah, so it's never enough. Whatever I say, there's always questions all the time. Never good enough, and not. It's always very critical and very little praise. Very quick to highlight the negative and just putting the positive. Mention it very quickly, but really focus on the negative.
Okay. So
is that intimidating?
Well, yeah, because I think that, I feel I lose my self-control really. Then I lose my self-confidence really.
Right. Okay. So when you think of that person, if they're walking up to you, what's the label in your head you have for them? They are.
I'm thinking, yeah, what a twat. No, not really, but.
That's the one that normally comes ahead of the actual behaviour.
Yeah, and I guess there's a lot of work to be done there, Not in that way, obviously, I don't mean to be rude. But there's a lot to say, obviously, to different personalities, ages, backgrounds. Yeah, it's just, and then the interaction are just always left with, oh, that wasn't good enough what I said. I need to prove more, to, you know, research more, whatever. Never good enough.
Okay. So the feeling of being as a judge, what? Just need to get to the right label, really. How would you label the behaviour? If they were coming up towards you and you're like, oh, here we go, here comes their
Yeah, here we go. You know, here comes the grilling time.
going to get grilling. So if you're going to get grilling from someone, it's more like
Judgment.
the judgmental.
Yeah, or the critic. Yeah.
Critical judgment.
And undermining as well.
Yeah, a little bit of that. A little bit of that, you know.
Yeah.
And everybody knows about everybody knows about the chickens, right?
The what?
The rule of the chickens.
Go on.
Well, you know, there's a really good TED talk about that, and how the, you know, the chickens, even between them, they're quite competitive. And, you know, so you'd have chickens that are really good at laying eggs, you know, and the way they thrive is not so much by being the best at laying eggs, it's being the best at stopping the others from laying the eggs.
Oh, right. Okay.
That's how chickens behave, you know.
Right. You learn something new every day. Okay, so it always has to come from, if I'm working with a client, it always has to, I would usually question them around their particular issue, and then it would come out with a particular label around the behavior. You know, if someone says, well, they're just a bit of an asshole, or something, they say something like that, I say, yeah, I appreciate that, but what's the behavior? How they make me feel? What's the label that you've come up with around that particular person? Because without really consciously paying attention to it, you'll be quick each time slapping that same label on this particular person. And therefore, if we're responding to a generalization, then we can't really see anything other than that label. It's a bit like if you think about a car has certain characteristics, like nearly all of them will have 4 wheels and a steering wheel and a windscreen and a etc. You straight away automatically can associate some basic characteristics towards that thing. And we do the same thing with a label. If we associate that to a particular person, then we start to look out for those particular behaviors. And that can cause us to be a little bit intellectually lazy, is one way of looking at it, when we come to dealing with this particular person. We're looking for what we expect to see rather than disproving it, which is psychological principle of the law of confirmation bias, which I don't know if Jess has covered that one before. But we look for evidence in our environment to prove what we expect to see, i.e. the label, rather than disprove it. We don't go around our life disproving all these ideas we've got about the world, because we'd start to go insane pretty quickly. So unless we change these particular labels, we're going to keep going up against the same particular issues with these people. And it can cause people wanting to leave relationships, leave businesses, or if you're kind of trapped with them for any reason, or you're stuck in that situation, then it just causes so much grief. So one of the first things we would do with people is change the label on them. So far we've got somebody not forthcoming, we've got someone dismissive, and we've got controlling, and we've got critical or judgmental. And these are all really great ones. And what I tend to find when I'm working with clients is once you start to get an idea of how this works, you get a nice general idea of how to reframe these particular behaviors with different people, so that it becomes a little bit easier when you notice these particular characteristics of people. And quite often you get this surprising result. So one time I had a lady who was doing one of my practitioner courses up in London, and the person, she could barely speak the person's name. It was somebody at work that she had to deal with every day. And they got off on the wrong foot, and it was a huge point of stress. So she could barely say the person's name. There was so much built up emotion around it. So after a quick relabeling, she felt completely different about the situation and the person and their behaviors. And when I checked in with her after the course and 3 months later, see how the relationship was different, she said that it's amazing, the change. And she said they even go out for a drink. They become friends. So they have a relationship outside of work as well now. And so it went from absolutely no chance to opening up something pretty cool. So it's a really useful technique to do. And hopefully we'll try and get through a couple of these as we go. We'll see how we get on. Okay. Let me just check I'm covering all the right areas after my little bit of a tech mishap. Yeah, okay, so a lot of the time, you don't want to spend any time with these particular people, but if you have to work with them, it's nice to take the upper hand, if you like, or be the emotionally intelligent one that wants to resolve it. And it's not always easy to decide to resolve a relationship, or at least have the intention to resolve it, when you've got someone who creates problems and stress in your life. But one of the things that we do talk about in NLP, and Jess mentions a lot, is that you can try and change the world, you can try and change other people, you can try and change all sorts of interesting things outside of yourself, or you can move around the world to get away from people. But the easiest thing to do is to change you. So if we want to take responsibility for our happiness and our health and our well-being, which includes not having stress, then we want to start to resolve some of those particular issues around those particular people. And that, like I say, sometimes it's challenging. And it can be hard sometimes for people to look beyond the label. And a lot of the times people have actually tried to just positively think through the person's behavior differently. But unless you change the label, it's not going to work. So that's what we need to do tonight. All right. Now, let's try and get you back on screen share again. I don't know if for the rest of you have got something in mind around particular labels you've got for people in your lives. I just try to think of the best one to work through here with you for this one. I think controlling is a really nice one to give as an example, if you don't mind running through that one, Amy.
Happy to do that, Nick. Hang on
Amy,
a second, just finding my start video, get off mute button. So I work with a colleague. In fact, I work with a sort of a function of the organisation I work in at the moment. And what I've noticed is sort of the microcosm of culture in that part of the business is quite command and control. So there's quite a just do it mentality. And a couple of the individuals, a couple of my stakeholders in that part of the business, I need to be really, really careful to just do as I'm told. Just do as you've been instructed and don't deviate from the script. It's quite tricky for me. I like to deviate from the script, particularly if I think the script isn't quite right in terms of how to engage people. So every now and then I just gently get put back in my box. So I feel quite controlled by one or two of the people that I am working with presently.
Okay.
They're lovely people. That, you know, I know they come from a place of good intent. I know that they are incredibly hardworking and wanting to do a great job, but their primary place is they very much want to be in control and struggle if I push the boundaries.
Okay, great. But this isn't, so just to check in, it's not a major theme of problems for you in relationships, it's just a particular couple of people?
Ooh, good question.
Does it come up in any other context in your life?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
But not life-shatteringly, but I do sort of push back from people that keep telling me what to do. I'm not a total rebel. I'm actually very compliant generally, but you know, I will want to know why something is happening, or I will want to understand what parameters I'm navigating around in certain situations. So maybe it has come up more in this situation, but I've really noticed it with the couple of people that I'm working with at the moment. Okay,
great. Well, let's run through the process then with this particular people. Do you want to choose one of them, which is more of a problem for you? The two. You don't have to name
Okay.
names.
Yeah, well, there's two people on this this call that I know rather well. So, and one of those people I work with. So I'm going to have to change names for the
Yes.
sake of the call, Emma, because otherwise you'll be going, ooh. So I'm going to call this person Neil.
Okay. Great. Okay. So let's run through the process then. I'll put this up on the screen for you. Can you see the screen? It's up on there.
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So the first one is then, what's the label for this person's behavior? So that normally if I'm working with someone, that's the first thing we want to find out. How do you perceive this person to be around you? What's the label you've given them? Remember, it's just a generalization. So it might be lazy, aggressive, manipulative, etc.
A bit stifling is the label I'd probably give them.
Okay, stifling. So we moved away from controlling.
Their behavior is controlling,
Yeah.
but I suppose the consequence of their controlling behavior is that I find it stifling. So controlling probably is the behavior if we're looking.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's go with that one then. All right, lovely. So that's the first thing we want to get written down. Okay, so those of you, if you can go through this afterwards or follow along as we go through with your own example, maybe if you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So next question is, how do you currently behave towards this person? One of the first things I would ask is, would you want to spend more time or less time with them? Seems quite obvious, but.
Well, I don't know if it is obvious. I really like them as a human being,
Yeah.
and normally really enjoy choosing to spend time with them. But presently, how do I currently behave towards them? I'm quite subservient.
Mm-hmm.
I am quite passive. I seek permission and approval is what I'm finding myself doing at the moment towards them.
Okay. Cool. Great. And in those moments where you perceive them to be controlling, you would probably choose to spend less time with them when they're in those moments, right? Really natural.
Yeah, I find that. Yeah, I find that exhausting, really. Yeah.
Great. And it can be very hard to find a bit of empathy for them, right? When they're doing that behaviour.
Well, I know that they are trying to do the best they can with what they've got.
Yeah.
But it does feel a bit tiring. I think that you don't have to do that. That's not necessary. So I do find it tiring and unnecessary.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. Thank you. All right. So the next one then. We just want to check in there because we can refer back to that response when we get down the end when we feel differently about the particular person. Okay. So the next one is then, and I know you wouldn't, Amy. I know you're not like this, but under what extreme circumstances would you feel the need to be controlling? Now, we need to go to extreme. We don't want to just think of the same particular situations that we're dealing with the problem. We want to go outside of that. So is there any area in your life where you felt completely justified in being controlling in a particular area?
I think if my children's lives were at risk, I would control everything that I could possibly control.
Okay.
That would be an extreme circumstance.
But there was some sense of jeopardy or...
Yeah, if I felt that people who were very precious to me were at risk, that would be a circumstance that I would move into a very controlling space if I thought that could help the situation.
Yeah. Okay, so something that was precious to you was being threatened?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, good. We'll keep going. We'll get a few different situations and
a few different scenarios. If I thought my security, which is kind of my primary question, is it safe? If I thought my safety or the safety of the people I love was at risk, I would absolutely adopt or could adopt a controlling behaviour.
Good. And feel justified in doing so, right?
Hell yeah. If there was a risk and safety, if the people I love were not safe.
Okay.
What other situations? Maybe sometimes if I thought I was right, I would try and control a situation because I knew what the right outcome was. Ha ha. I know that has got lots of holes in it, Nick.
I know.
That one.
We'll just go with the map of the world.
I'm just trying to think what else might be other situations that I would control under. I suppose if I was under pressure, so if I was under time pressure to deliver something, I would become controlling.
Okay, yeah. And at that time pressure, if whatever reason that particular job wasn't done on time, then there could be repercussions or some kind of
There would be some kind of consequence to that.
Consequence, yeah. Lovely. Okay. Any more? What do you think that's about it for now?
It probably covers most bases for me.
Right, okay, perfect. So what we've got is, the way we do it, we try and get as many nice different ways of looking at a particular behavior. We're kind of jumping out of our generalization as much as we can, so that we can look at times potentially where we felt justified in doing that in our own experience, even though we wouldn't do it all the time. There's times when we feel maybe that we have, or an extreme situation where it would feel like the right choice of action in those situations, you know. And quite often when I do this for myself or with my clients, I kind of go to the end of the world scenarios in my mind and make it really dramatic, and then it can be quite often much more obvious. And ironically, at the moment, we're in a really interesting situation here, so it's not quite that bad. But if you are struggling with, if any of you listening are struggling with finding a particular time where you might be that behavior or feel that justified in doing it, then that can be a useful scenario to jump to try and get the right answers to help you. Because they're really trying to look for some empathy and some understanding. And unfortunately, it seems nowadays that empathy is, you know, a bit of a sparse commodity, it seems, around the world. So it's always something we can get to. It's very, very helpful for us. And if we can find it, it changes the way we think about our person, their behavior, and it can transform the relationships. So we've got some of the examples we've got, what extreme circumstances for Amy would be maybe if your kid's life were at risk, or someone you love, so their lives are at risk, there was some kind of strong jeopardy there, then that you would feel justified in being controlling. Of course, I think most people could understand that one. If something was precious to you and that was being threatened as well, that might feel justified again in having controlling behavior. Or if your security or safety was threatened. Or at a time when you just felt that you knew you were right about something and it was really important to you to keep that and maintain that, then you might feel the need to do that. And then maybe if there was some kind of time pressure leading to some unwanted consequences too, then that again would make you feel justified. Good. So the next one down then, it says if that's how the other person, what it should say on this, potentially perceives the situation. So if we're going to assume, we're going to choose one of these, and we're going to assume that potentially that's how the other person might be thinking, and that's why they're doing the behavior. Okay, so if that's how the other person's potentially perceiving the situation, what would become a more accurate label for them? So when you think about that person, is it that something's at risk potentially for them that's causing them to be controlling? Is it something that's precious to them? Is their safety or security threatened?
I think they are committed to serving and supporting a group of people. So the risk is if we don't deliver what they want us to deliver in the way that they want it to deliver, then they think there will be a inferior level of support potentially, or advice that would go to a group of people. They have a really protective thread that runs through them. So there's probably part of them that is thinking they want to support me in my role at the moment, and protect me from, you know, exposing myself in some way in terms of the guidance or advice I give. So there's probably a protective element to that. You know, read the script, Amy. The script will keep you on track. So there's probably a protective element as well as a service element to a greater good. I think they are concerned about the you know, I think all businesses at the moment are in a situation where they are in survival mode. So if we were looking at a risk situation, they could be interpreting our situation and saying, we need to take these steps and we need to fulfill this role for our organisation to survive. So if we were looking for that danger situation or that risk situation, they're probably coming at it from that point of view.
Okay, so would that be the protective one then?
Yep, there's probably a few in there. There's probably a save this organisation, protect this organisation for the future.
Yeah.
Protect you as an individual in this environment because it's a new environment to you.
Yeah.
And there's probably I have a certain reputation where I provide brilliant advice and I have great teams that bring brilliant advice. So I want you to represent that properly and represent me for, you know, in the best possible way as well. So there's probably a protection of their self and their reputation, protection of the organisation more generally, and protection of me as a human being so that, you know, I can succeed.
Okay, great. So what we want to do then is choose the label which you just said a few times. If we go with protective, yeah, so we change the label from controlling into actually protective is more accurate, where you would actually understand where the behavior comes from. You could empathize with that.
Yeah, yeah.
And we really do need to, in our minds, change the actual label that we do give them when we see them, rather than, oh, blimey, this person's being controlling. It's like, no, maybe they're being protective. Maybe, we don't know. We never do. We're mind reading, but we're trying to do a really useful mind read that's going to help us get more out of the person.
I know it comes from a place of good intent.
Yeah.
So I find it controlling and stifling, but I know that they mean well.
Yeah.
So protective is a good label for them.
Great. Okay. Perfect. And you're a smart cookie. You know what you're doing a lot of the time as well. You use the tools, don't you? So
allegedly.
Right.
You catch yourself out every now and then, but sometimes I try. Yeah.
Well, that's it. And then sometimes you get all the tools in the world, and it can be really hard with some particular people. You know, so good to run through it and see how you get on. So
yeah,
what we want to do is change the label from controlling to protective. And then the question that's up on the screen now is, how would you behave differently towards someone who has actually potentially they're being controlling because they're actually being protective of people? How would
say that question again, Nick? Say how that make me feel, did you say?
How would you behave differently towards someone who actually is, their behavior is potentially because they're feeling they need to protect people rather than controlling them?
I think I would be a bit more accepting and tolerant. And I think I would find kindness and sort of substitute that for frustration. So I'd probably really think about what is the emotion or what is the feeling that, you know, it's not going to change the situation. So I'm going to think about what emotion I'm going to potentially put in the forefront to help me to navigate through this person's preferences. So I'd probably look at just sort of showing them a bit of kindness because I know they're doing the best with what they've got, and I suppose a bit more tolerance than maybe I've got right now.
Okay. Would you, well, a lot of the time we find that people sort of, I don't know, withhold information but don't communicate as well as or as much as they potentially could have done because of the old label. When you think about them being, actually maybe they're just being really protective, that's what's driving the behavior. Does that make you want to do anything different, like spend more time, open up more, give more? I'm sure you're doing a lot of the good stuff already, but
I think maybe be less nervy around them. So I make sure I keep them updated. They've got all the information they need. There are no surprises.
Yeah.
I am openly and overtly very compliant. I'm very careful what I say. So maybe so I'm doing all of the things that they need to have that controlling need met and for them to feel okay. But I think maybe it's just me feeling a little bit less nervy around them and a little bit less, oh God, have I done that? Have I, you know, and maybe just to relax a little bit into what I do.
Great. Okay. Now, one of the things we say in NLP is lots of different psychologists will say this, is that if you change you, other people around you will begin to change as well. As you know, Amy, through your courses. And because something quite magical can happen when we do this technique without having to have a conversation with the other person. Next time you meet them, you give off a different set of non-verbal cues. Around about 93% of our communication is non-verbal. So quite often when you do this technique, next time you see that person, you're seeing someone who's in protective mode, that's what's driving these interesting behaviors. You can get softening of the eyes, different body language, different tone of voice, a different choice of words. All sorts of interesting things can happen just as a natural byproduct of you changing the label into something that's less threatening, really, in this situation. And it can be really subtle, and it can transform the relationship just with you. It might not do it with everyone else. And often you have people who change the label on someone, and they have this incredible influence around this particular person. And quite often in the businesses, lots of the teams can have the same labels for the same people, particular people. There's a reputation going on. So if that one person can change the label, then they can have the influence over that person, positive influence, that others might not, which tends to get people going, wow, what are you doing with this person? Especially if they're really challenging for a lot of others. So just by subtly changing that, you can have a really big difference with them. If you have conversations after that, then perfect. But it's not always required, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will continue to have conversations with them, and hopefully as and when we get to some kind of new normal, I will be continuing to work with them in a different capacity moving forward. So,
right.
I think that's really helpful. But I think in the meantime, what just walking through that technique will help me with is not to have that sort of nervous, am I getting it right? Puppy dog, please say I'm okay. Please say I'm doing a really good job. Energy that I'm having around them, which they're probably finding quite irritating.
Right.
So that will just help me to reflect on that and think about how I approach them in a slightly different way from now on.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Because controlling is always going to come with it a level of kind of threat almost. Something's being done to you, which makes us feel like the victim of something, maybe even just ever so slightly. When we can change the label into something more effective, it puts us back in more in control, back at cause, taking responsibility, and like you say, that it's changed the viewpoint, and it's changed that. It should change that kind of. What was the word you used with them?
Nervy energy.
Nervy energy, yeah. That should shift, because you're going to probably fix it. I can do more to help this person feel more in control. So that'd be really interesting to see how that particular one goes. Just to finish it off, we've looked at how you might behave differently towards them. If you change that response, how do you think they might respond to you in turn?
I think because I'm working to meet all their control needs, they're sort of reaching out. They sort of called me today just to see how I was and talk through various different things. And so I know they're really trying to engage and connect. What will they do and respond if I'm a bit less nervy?
Yeah.
They might relax a little bit more. They might relax some of the controls around me because they feel a bit more control, a bit more relaxed around what I'm doing. So not sure, but maybe they will feel a little bit more relaxed and perhaps feel less, it's less necessary to have such control around me.
Great. Perfect. So it's always, the key is to see how the behavior changes with this particular person. Are you going to be seeing them anytime soon? Or?
Well, seeing, I suppose, in a virtual sense, next week I'll be working with them on and off every day next week.
Great, okay. Perfect. Let me know how you get on.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, good. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. What we'll try and do is another one. You've got a bit of time to do another one. Thank you, Amy, for working through that one with me. Is that making sense to you, lovely people, so far? Hopefully it is. Let's do another one. It's always nice. What else we got? So, Naomi, if you're there, the dismissive
Yeah.
label. Yeah? Should we do that one? That sounds like an interesting one.
So my partner, whenever I address anything emotional, he'll just dismiss it. Definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Just quickly go back to Amy's point. Sorry, just I missed that thought. Amy, if you've got that underlying pattern around controlling coming up for you, make sure you get a timeline on that one on a re-imprint as quickly as you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
I'll call you. I'll be in touch.
Awesome. Good stuff. Thank you. All right, Naomi, sorry about that. Okay, so let's run through the process again. So it's quite a clear one. It feels like when you try and communicate, was there anything emotional to them? Like having a discussion or a chat or something, just like you do in relationships?
Anything important?
Right, okay. It comes across as being dismissive, right?
Yep.
Okay, great. So, number one, what's the label for this person's behavior? We've got a nice clear one there. You've got dismissive. All right. And I just ask you again as well, just out of interest, does that come up for you anywhere else in your life, or is it purely with this one particular person?
One person.
Just one. Okay, good.
No one else.
Yeah, great. Okay, lovely. So, how do you currently behave towards this person when they're being dismissive?
I don't challenge it because I think what you said framed at the beginning, I know that I anticipate that he's going to be dismissive, so I don't challenge it. I just go, okay. I'm not accepting it, so I don't accept it. I'm not happy about it, but I find it annoying, so I'll start what I want to say and then get anywhere. Then
Right.
I'll like walk away.
Yeah. So interestingly, because we're always responding to these labels, these generalizations, even before, if you know you've got something to say, even before you're about to say it, you're reading into what that response is going to be because of the label, and therefore you're adjusting yourself to suit, because you kind of already predicted how it's going to work out, which ends up causing us to not be quite as effective as we could be. So it'd be a nice one to shift for you, because our beliefs create our experience. We've covered that one on some sessions beforehand, and that's because of your labels and your generalizations about the world and your beliefs. So if we can shift that, you'll start to see things differently in your environment as well and in your interactions with people. So with this particular person, you've already, you don't want to challenge, you bring it up, but you don't want to challenge. You're already a little bit, maybe not communicating the way you would like to already because of what you're expecting to happen. Perfect. So there's a sense of not quite being not quite being yourself, or not quite expressing yourself the way you'd like to do. Yeah. Oh, sorry. There's a weird noise in the driveway. Threw me. Okay. So not quite yourself. Perfect. And we always want to be ourselves 100%, don't we? And how easy is it to be ourselves with everyone all the time, 100%? Not very easy, right? If it is, tell me how you do it. If you do it consistently, that's really great. That's one of the keys to life, I believe. Okay, good. So that's number two. How do you currently behave towards this person? Now, next one. Now, I know you wouldn't, Naomi, I'm sure you wouldn't ever be dismissive, but under what extreme circumstances would you?
Oh, I would.
Huh?
I would.
Okay.
Yeah, I would. If my daughter, if she's annoying me in lockdown, especially if it's got to the point where I've said and I've been kind and I've offered sweets and I've given other options of things to do, I would just say, no, I don't know. And I would dismiss it. I would say, no, go to your room.
Okay.
Not another day, but later on in the day. So I think with a child, I would be dismissive if she had bad behaviour.
Okay.
Not often. It would just be if I'd reached the point where I've tried, and it's not getting anywhere, so I'd just say, right, no.
So when you're kind of running out of ideas,
yeah.
So is it leading towards desperation if you were feeling a bit?
Yeah. So an example this evening of going for a walk. I wanted to go for a walk, and then my daughter was in the car, and she said she just doesn't want to go. And so I was like, well, you are going because we've come now in the car, and then I think so at that point I was dismissing her feelings of not wanting to go. So I'm just being honest. So I don't do this often, but I would in some circumstances. So I was dismissing her feelings of not wanting to go to the walk because I wanted us to go on the walk because I felt like that was the best thing for us.
Right. Okay. So if you had to be in control of a particular situation, maybe that you would feel like justified maybe in being dismissive. You wouldn't want to be, obviously, but
no, it's not my character usually. Just
no.
Sometimes I would.
Okay, so give us some other examples. What other extreme circumstances would you feel then justified in being dismissive?
I don't know, because I am, that is a really odd example, because I would say one of my best things is I'm extremely patient. So it's probably a problem, because I would listen to people's problems all day and things like that. I don't really, apart from that kind of situation, if it's a behavioural thing and it's repetitive, but extreme, I don't know. I couldn't think. If it's repetitive, maybe, but it just keeps the same thing keeps happening.
Okay. Yeah, so again, like a lack of control there.
Yeah, if you get to I think that's more if you can't deal with that. If you can't deal with something that's repetitive and you get easily frustrated.
Yeah, so if you get unresourceful.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, more? Give us some more.
So my example of what I think if I just didn't care, I think if someone's dismissive, it means that they don't care. Because in my example of my daughter not wanting to go to the walk, I didn't care that she didn't want to go on the walk. We're going on the walk anyway. So I think it means if you're dismissing someone, you don't care about how they feel in that moment.
Yeah.
You care about your needs and not having to deal with that other person or conflict.
Okay, so if you have like a clear outcome in mind and it's going to happen and people aren't following along with you, then in order for things to go the way you need them to go, you would feel that justified in dismissing them. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't like it, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if that was in a work situation, maybe, or some other strong sense of jeopardy. So if the world was about to end, and the way I see it is, if we have no more police force and there's no more army, and we're all out just to look after ourselves, what would cause you to feel the need to be completely dismissive there, do you think? What's the situation?
Someone had a rubbish plan.
Okay.
That was going to cause, similarly, the last one, if it was going to cause harm.
Great.
Then I wouldn't follow the plan. I would do my own thing.
Great. Okay, again, some form of kind of jeopardy. Good. Okay. Any more you can think of?
Only that. Only harm. I don't think there's anything else you can just be patient with, I suppose. I think if it's harm, or someone's going to harm themselves or harm you, then yeah. Anything else you have time for to listen.
Okay. All right. So, obviously, that when we look at what extreme circumstances, we're not suggesting that we would want to do that or need to do that or feel. I mean, we would need to. We wouldn't be our favoured way of doing it, but sometimes we are pushed in certain directions to behave in certain ways for all sorts of useful reasons. Sometimes justified, sometimes not. So I just want to check in there and see ones which could be.
Oh, if
Really?
someone lied, maybe. I know that's not extreme, but I suppose if it was a complete lie, you would dismiss a lie. If it was like a complete lie that was, maybe, even if that wasn't putting you in harm, but if it was ruining something, like a reputation or something, if it was a complete lie, you would dismiss it.
Okay, good. All right, so thank you. The next one down then would be, if that's potentially, when we're thinking about, is it your other half, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, if that's potentially how they perceive the situation. So if they're either unresourceful, they've got a clear outcome or trying to protect something, or whatever's going on could potentially cause harm, what would be the more useful label then to label their behavior, rather than actually they're being dismissive when you try and have a conversation with them? What's a more useful way of looking at it? Is it that they just don't have the resources, or they're trying to protect something, or what would you think? Are the ones we've just discussed?
I could say something, but that's not how I feel. I don't know. I could say, you mean to label it in a positive way?
Yeah, we want to just, if we can get to, we want to get to a bit of empathy around this particular behavior. So if we can look at a very,
They don't want to have the same kind of conversation again, maybe, or they don't want, they are worried
because
about they're worried about, if you're talking about emotions, they're worried about the outcome.
Right, okay. So if they don't have the resources or the tools, maybe, and the thought of going there and dealing with the actual particular issue or the emotion.
Yeah, that absolutely, yeah. That
Yeah, okay. So what would you label that as? Scared? What would you say? Worried?
I say worried over scared. Yeah.
Yeah. Great,
I
okay.
think scared would be more fear. Worried would be more, I'm worried about changing the situation. Worried about change.
Great, yeah. And if you don't have the resources or the tools, and lots of men, lots of people, men and women, but lots of men don't always have the skills because of all sorts of reasons, then yeah, worried. So if worried is the new label then, and you want to apply that to those situations, how would you behave differently towards feeling actually, if they're worried, when you perceived it before to be dismissive, actually, and maybe they're just really worried about what might come of it, how do you feel differently about that?
I suppose if someone's worried, you have to reassure them.
Okay.
Then isn't that you reassuring them about their feelings rather than you addressing something that's important to you?
Well, if they're distorting what potentially might happen because of prior experiences, or they've witnessed stuff in their parents' relationships of trying to communicate openly and it hasn't worked out very well, then reassuring them might be a useful thing. It's okay to express how you feel. We can deal with those sorts of things. It's better out than in, if you like most things. So if you did have that, relabel it into actually maybe they're just really worried. When you think about them in those situations, just purely the fact that you said you'd want to reassure them, like we talked about before, your 93% of non-verbal communication would really be different. You would soften, and lots of things would change. Your tone of voice, your choice of words, all sorts of really useful things would shift without you having to do anything other than just think about the new label. So maybe then you would reassure them, yeah? What else how would you behave towards them?
So no, I find it a challenge. I find this a challenge.
Because?
I suppose I need to shift my mind I think I'm saying things, but maybe it's not actually what I think. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I could reassure them. But if I genuinely think they are dismissive, then I need to kind of do think if they are worried, what if you're reassuring somebody, if you're worried,
They're worried, potentially.
if they're worried,
Yeah.
what more can you do?
The dismissive is obviously, it's a protective mechanism, right?
Yeah.
Lots of people do it. And it's because they don't have the resources behind it to really navigate through that particular situation.
Oh, you could say, ask more questions. No, well, questions, that's the thing. Questions is what causes the dismissiveness. So I was going to say I could ask another question in the sense of is there anything I can do to kind of thing, but I that's the kind of thing I would do, but it wouldn't really get anywhere. Yeah.
The thing to remember is, but you remember before you said when you respond, when you think about having a conversation with them about something, you already immediately think or expect them to be dismissive. So your tone of voice will come across a certain way.
Yeah.
There'll be an energy around you which will be come across a certain way. So each time you go up against that, the bubbles, your bubble, if you like, and their bubble, they're expecting it, and they're like, oh, and you're like, oh, right, what's going to happen here? So if we change the label, that energy is going to shift completely.
Okay.
And we are mind reading into what we think they're experiencing. It's a nice way of trying to gain some empathy around why they might be doing what they're doing. I'm sure they're not a mean or a bad person. I'm sure they're just doing the very best they can. And it's difficult for people to have open and honest communication in relationships. And if his strategy is to be dismissive, then I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be his favored choice if he had more tools in his toolkit, if you like.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why we want to really change the label. If you keep thinking back to them now with the same label as dismissive, it's still going to bounce back against the same problem. If you think about them, actually, maybe they're doing all that just purely because they're worried and they're trying to protect themselves. Then maybe that you might reassure them more. You feel like you might come across it with a different energy next time.
Okay.
Yeah? So you might ask them more questions. How else might your behavior be different?
No, I really don't know what to say as an answer, but I don't know.
Okay.
That doesn't mean I don't think I should change my behaviour. I just actually don't know.
Yeah. So it's what we're trying to do is we're trying to outflex a problem. So it's changing your behaviour not to let people get away with anything or not do anything differently themselves, but if we can change, then other people can change around us. So that if you can outflex, one of the things in NLP we do is we try and outflex situations. The more flexible you are, the more chance you have of adjusting and changing or controlling a situation in a more useful way. So you'll get something different from them. Purely, I mean, without even having a conversation about it, the next time you think about having a conversation with him about this particular instinct, this subject, sorry, then you're just going to apply that new label. You're going to come across in a very different way and you should get a very different response. It's like systems. If you change anything in a system, you're going to get a different response. If you kept, I'm assuming this thing's happened over and over again a few times. Has it happened in relationships up to now before this one? No, just purely this one. Okay, great. So what if you change one part of the system, the other part of the systems have to change. So it'd be really interesting to see how it goes.
Okay.
So for you, you might reassure them, ask more questions because you're seeing someone who's actually worried rather than dismissive. And then the last question there is, how might they respond in return, do you think? You're coming across as something different. I know we're guessing, but if your energy's changed.
They might open up more, say something more.
Yeah. Okay.
They might maybe trust the situation more.
Yeah.
And feel more cared for. So they'll reciprocate the care.
Great. Which would be a very different, different response. I mean, I'm sure you can all put yourself in a situation where you felt dismissive to someone or an idea or something, and the energy you have is quite, it's almost like, sometimes you feel like you've already got a wall up. If that wall's not there, next time you have that conversation, it's going to make a big difference to the way the other person responds to you, right? So that can be really a powerful technique for you. It'd be interesting to see how you get on with that, Naomi.
Nick, may I ask a question? Sorry, Naomi.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just thinking, because I can see parallels in other relationships I've got in terms of this dismissive element. And if Naomi were to do something different next time, but get exactly the same response, because that person will be thinking, hang on, who's stolen Naomi? I mean, even more of a threat now, and even more dismissive, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
How do you, how many times do you need to be different? Or how many times do you need to demonstrate different behaviours before the system changes? What's your view on that?
Well, with this particular technique, if you get it right, it can shift things in a really useful way that things can change immediately. But if somebody's got stuff, they've got issues in the background where they just can't express themselves, they're terrified of confrontation, or they're terrified of dealing with it in a bad way that's going to cause them to lose something they really value, then discussions need to be had around a next step forward. It might be that they need a bit of coaching. Lots of people go through this and they try and they relabel and they work really hard to try and adjust and bounce around the problem as much as they can and try and resolve it. If it doesn't happen and the other person isn't willing to work on it either, then you haven't got a relationship.
Yeah.
If you're not relating to each other, you've got really not much to work on. So if you try your hardest and it's not working and they don't want to change, then you might be having to think about moving on from that relationship if you tried everything you can. That's always the worst case scenario, but you're learning and you're moving on from it so that you learn for the next relationship, if that's a problem. But if it's the other person, they might not even feel like they're doing anything wrong as well. They might just feel like they're being badgered or pestered. So people see things in all sorts of different ways. I don't know the state of your relationship, Naomi. I'm sure it might just be a tweak that needs to happen and a breakthrough in a relationship. It's always a difficult one unless you're working with somebody and you're really getting into a coaching session with them to understand what the situation is behind it. But this is one of the first things we would try, and then they may need to seek some help, read a book, get some therapy or something themselves. And you're with the right person because they might resist against it, but they will want to do what's best for the sake of the relationship. I'm not sure if that answers your question, Amy.
Yeah, it
Thank
does.
you, Amy.
Helpful. Thank you.
I know it's difficult if you're in a relationship, you've got kids and all that sort of stuff. Jess will talk more about this, I'm sure, as she goes through her 3 sessions with you. So that's the worst case scenario. If nothing works, at least you're trying everything, and then you'll be moving towards an outcome that is going to work out for you either way. It might be not what you want, but it might be what needs to happen. That can be challenging, but I'm sure that this will make a difference with you, Naomi. Like I say, it's almost like it's not a magic cure, but it can have magical results, this particular technique, when you're dealing with other people. So one of the best things about NLP, and we'll work on this when we go do the emotional intelligence evening, is that if you can look beyond the behavior that you're seeing in front of you, if that's a problem, and accept the person behind it, that really helps, because when we're born, we're beautiful, lovely, wonderful bundles of energy. And all we have is two fears: fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. Everything else from that is learnt. We've learnt from our role models, we've learnt from our parents, we've learnt from all sorts of different people. And sometimes we learn to avoid, or we learn to run away from anxiety or stress or pain or potential perceived pain. So these interesting strategies come in that we've just quite often unconsciously modeled from other people. So if we can start to look beyond the behavior, that's all it is, then we can start to understand what's going on for the person behind it. Yeah, and that's a really useful thing to try and remember. People are not their behaviors. If it's a bad behavior, it can be changed. And underneath everything, people are wonderful. If you have all your resources you need, you wouldn't feel the need to be controlling or dismissive or aggressive or whatever behaviors kick in. You just wouldn't feel the need to. You'd have much more resources to deal with these things in a much more useful way. But when in a relationship, there has to be communication, and if there's no communication, or the other person stonewalls or will not discuss, then you've got to really have a serious think about being as flexible as you can to change it if that's your outcome. If it's not working, then maybe some other action has to be taken, but there's plenty of stuff you can throw at it before you get to that point. You know, and I'm sure it's not as bad as that for you. Does that help when you think about that one?
Yeah, I'll try and apply that. I will give it a good couple of stabs this week.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, go gentle. The generalization, it does tend to be guys that don't like to go there, just don't have very good strategies. So just try to be as authentic as you can. I know I don't like that word very much, because a lot of the self-development industry is, certainly Instagram has ruined the word authentic for me. But trying to be your best self and put yourself forward in that situation with that thought in your mind, I'm sure you'll get a different result. But again, tread lightly. I'm sure you can figure it out. It's empathy is the key when you're relabeling these things with people. All right, if you can get a slice of empathy, it really helps you to start moving away, because you can start to understand where they might be coming from, because you can put yourself in that situation too. Okay. So hopefully that's helped, and the rest of you, sorry, I haven't done all the other labels, but hopefully in terms of a strategy for relabeling someone's behavior, hopefully this has been useful. It's all about getting yourself out of your map of the world. Remember we talked about map of the world on different different evenings before. Your map is your way of looking at the world based on your experiences, situations, circumstances, and events that have caused you to be who you are right this moment. And that can cause us some challenges. So if we can jump out of our map, because we're not always right, although it feels like it, we're not always right, that can give us a real crack in the door in terms of seeing things differently, and then in turn influencing people in a more effective way, so that we can all be happy and healthy and have the kind of wonderful relationships that we want to have. But it's not always easy. I appreciate that. And it's not supposed to be easy. As evolution is, and growth can be challenging. But we've got some really great simple strategies for the rest of these sessions that should be able to help you with that. So I'd encourage you to at least try and relabel one person in your life, whether it's a colleague or a family member. You know, families can be challenging. I'm sure there's plenty of labels been kicking around these last few weeks, no doubt, which has been causing frictions. And a lot of the time, if you change the labels, a lot of those frictions wouldn't happen. So please use it. Have a feel of how it feels differently when you can get to that empathy, and then kind of go from there. And then by all means, if you think it's useful, help other people with it as well. If we can do some good from these sessions and get a nice ripple effect going some way and somehow, then that's going to be a pretty beautiful thing. So hopefully it's been useful. Has anybody got any questions about the technique or anything else?
Nick, you just mentioned, sorry, it's Amy again, you just mentioned there was two things as a child we had. One was a fear of falling, and then I missed the other one. What was the other one?
Fear of loud noises.
Fear of loud noises.
Yeah, that's all we're born with.
Everything else we pick up along the way. Brilliant.
That's it. You learn it from your parents, you learn it from role models or teachers or school, or all sorts of interesting things, media, all sorts. So if you've learned it, you can unlearn it. Yeah, and if it's getting in the way of you being happy, then we can unlearn it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Nick, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, hi, Ray.
Hi. You said that people are not their behaviours and behaviours can change.
Yeah. Hard ones to swallow sometimes.
People often say, though, that you can't change somebody. So
Right.
How does those two statements work together?
Well, saying that you can't change someone is a limiting belief. People say a leopard can't change his spots, or people can't change, or I'm too old to change. It's more the fact that other people are scared of changing, or they don't want to.
Well, they've got to change themselves, though, haven't they? That's the point, isn't it? You can't change them, but they could change themselves.
Well, a lot of the time, people can be just responding to our stuff that we've got going on.
Ah, right, okay, yeah.
So if we've got a particular issue going on for ourselves, then if we take responsibility and try and change us first, quite often our world around us can change too. So that's the first thing, and we always say with NLP, it's the first thing we do too. Is if I've got a problem, I'm going to go to me first, and then if there's anything left, then we can maybe discuss it from there. And quite often there is. Some people, I know some people in my life who don't want to change. They think their map of the world is the world. They think that they are fixed and firm and they are right. They wouldn't want to change. And anytime I try and give them another way of looking at something, they're quite rude. It's one particular person, and it's really hard, but it's not my job to fix them or change them.
No.
If they don't feel safe by changing it, all I do is separate myself from them, and I don't see them very often. So there is an element of having to protect yourself from some people sometimes if they don't want to change. But it's really interesting to see what happens if you work on yourself first. Everyone can change, anyone can change, you just need to want to, like you say.
Yeah,
okay. You've got to think about it, Yeah. Okay, so Jess will run you through some more stuff on the next session. I'll jump in on the one after that, and then we'll go from there. If you've got any other final questions, if not, how are we doing for time? Pretty much bang on. Sorry about the technical issues. I will practice this week. Thanks for helping me out and being patient. If you've got any other stuff that you think of after the session, stick it up on the Facebook page. If you're all friends of the group, please put that up. Or any feedback or any things you would like to experience, or any other questions you have, we can try and help that out as much as possible. Other than that, hope it's been useful. Thank you so much for joining up, and we'll get this recording out as quickly as we can. And hopefully you'll be back for the next one next week with Jess.
Yep.
That's great. Thanks so much, Nick.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Very generous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi to Jess.
Thank you. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.